Hello there, Sarah from 17 once again. This is my Uncharted 4 crushing difficulty video walkthrough. This is chapter 18, it is New Devon, and this is a really interesting level. It's 38 minutes worth of interesting thanks to a stealth section that I couldn't do that turned into a siege. But the good news is, it's a pretty simple siege, so we'll be able to war of attrition the tits off the enemies. But it's interesting for a few reasons, like that there, jumping from that to this, I somehow managed to miss. I've never missed it before, but I missed it on the recording this time, and I died. So that's why there was that choppy edit just then. I have no idea why, I did nothing different, yet, boom, it killed me. It was really bizarre. But that's not the only bizarre thing in this level. The strangest feature for me, personally, is the area where you can stealth and there's a big bunch of dudes in like a big open space, and then you need to get to that waterfall at the back of them. In that sequence, you can either stealth it or you can kill them, or you can do a bit of both. When you get about 2/3 through that environment, which is not that big, you get a checkpoint. Regardless of if you're fighting or not, I think. They give you a checkpoint in that sequence, which is not that big, yet they expect you to do those 2 full areas in Marooned with no checkpoint. Why? Why is it like that? If anything, this fight would have benefited more from not having the checkpoint, because it would have enabled it to be a little bit more demanding on the player, whereas death would have had a bigger penalty. Whereas in Marooned, death has such a big penalty, it's not fun at all. It's fucking the opposite of fun. And I find it really bizarre, and the only thing I can think of is maybe you only get it when you stealth, and it's intended so that you can experiment with that final area to try and get across from the roofs to the rock side, so you can sneak to where the water cave is, because sneaking into that cave is hard as balls, because there's like 20 dudes on that cliffside, and all of them are looking at each other, so you can't even seemingly divide and conquer them. And because the game doesn't have like a toss of rocks system or any kind of distraction, it seems to be pretty tricky to do. And I haven't seen it done, but I already know that it can be done because I nearly did it myself. But once again, folks, after I try something for about 20 minutes in this game, I'm just done. You know, I don't know what it is. Me and Uncharted 4 are divisive. But I nearly drowned in the water, and that's where it gave me a checkpoint. Can you believe it gave me a checkpoint after swimming for that distance? And yet we've done some of those other fights where there was no checkpoint in sight when we really could have used one. That to me is strange, and I can't even analyse it and really think as to why it would work that way, because to me it feels bad. It feels like maybe the other areas should have had checkpoints, I just didn't go to the right place where they were. Or maybe this is a sequence where they forgot to take a checkpoint out because they think that makes it difficult. I don't know. But what I'm going to do, guys, is I'm going to systematically isolate people and kill them. And after a while, I get spotted and it all kicks off. But at that point, I do the same thing. I go back to the shore that we started on. I get behind the big tree and then I snipe people with my scope. And it works a treat, and it enables me to thin down numbers. The problem is, you're going to be watching this fight for about 15 minutes, because as effective as this technique is I'm showing you, it isn't quick. And I can't help but feel like this can be done in about 4 minutes using the stealth. But once again, I just couldn't do the final push. But the level design here is so interesting. I could probably write a thesis on the level design on a fight such as this, because there are so many tiers, there are so many ledges, there are so many egress points, so many places where you can jump from, where you can climb, where you can have a height advantage, where you can go beneath it. It is insanely designed, but I get this feeling, and I don't know if anybody else is with me here, I'm probably on my own little island, but it looks like, with the way it's designed, it should be more fun than it is. And I don't know if anybody else gets this from this game, but when you look at the complexity of what you can do here and how everything bridges together, everything connects, and how dynamic it is. I love that, how he just uses his wife as a ledge. That's hilarious. But for all the attention here and all the emphasis on flanking and choice, it isn't as fun as it looks like it should be. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's just me. But every fight like this is overly long and not very fun. It's bizarre because I would liken this to the first gunfight in Abducted, where you don't have any weapons and you drop down from that side of that boat and there is a bunch of people doing little paths, and then as you push up to that right hand side it spawns that next movement of enemies, and then you trigger another spawn, and it's just a big open area with plenty of choice and things. And I would rather do that any day than this, because that makes a lot more sense to me. This is just something that should be fun, should be dynamic, should be diverse, and it ends up just being kind of boring and annoying. And it's funny too, because that sequence in Uncharted 3 is a tough sequence, but it always feels fair. Like, even when you have to press triangle to get off of turrets, even though I think it should be circle, it still feels fair. Like, I don't know what it is. I've just got this fetish for the older games. I'm that person that can't like the new things. You know, the dude who hates the musicians' new albums because it doesn't sound like that classic one that everybody loved 15 years ago. I've seemingly become that person, and I didn't want to be, you know, and I don't want to be now as I'm watching this back and I'm seeing this beautiful game. Like, look at the lily pads. It's so beautiful. The lighting when you're underwater, that Gaussian effect on the surface, so stellar. This is where the stealth path leads to, by the way. You can climb up this wall here, and there is probably a moment where you can jump across to the rocks, but there's a guy on the left who will see you eventually, and there's about 2 guys on this roof that are patrolling, and then there's the 3 other guys on the actual side you're trying to get to. So finding that opening and that gap is one of those moments where you're going to have to just commit to it and get lucky, or you understand the gap, that there is a hole and how to exploit it, and I just couldn't find it. So instead, 15-minute siege. But let's talk about some other features, shall we? So this game utilizes blind fire, and it's really effective. I love games that have effective blind fires. There's just something about it that I think makes them really satisfying. And this game is stellar for it. I think somebody sees that guy's body, which would suck, because he fell into the water, for Christ's sake. How do you see that? Technically he would float, but I don't think they do in this game. But the blind fire mechanic is great on everything except maybe the grenades. I think you can fuck yourself more than you fuck other people with the grenades if you're not careful. The platforming and the climbing in this game feels so dynamic, it feels so organic, it feels really, really good. And I've mentioned previously how good the climbing and the movement and the animations feel in this one. And when you go back to 3 and you see some of the jarring transitions between jumping and running and stuff like that, you really appreciate just how much they've elevated the quality of this one. And that's not to say that the old ones had poor quality, because they didn't. It's just so much more advanced, so much more sophisticated. And there's another dead guy, so get on the floor. Now we can continue onwards. Stealthing dudes. A lot of people with their backs to us, a lot of people that might be able to see us but can't. This is a very complicated scenario, this one. And there's another tricky one coming up at the end, because I don't think that this is a very tough encounter. I just think it's layered. It's layered, it's detailed, and it enables the player to have a lot of choice, which is what gaming seems to be moving towards, and I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of it. I'm a fan of it for certain things, I'm not a fan of it for other things. It seems to be one of those, you either do it really well and it resonates with people, or I think that guy sees me. Yeah, he saw us. Which, that's fair, you know, that's as it should be. But I was thinking how that this design's going to be affecting future games, because if you look at the other Uncharteds, they didn't have areas as big as this game. This game has gone towards seemingly more open areas for pieces of conflict, like this one, and like the ones we've previously done. We know that Ghost Recon's going towards this open world format, which I'm really sad about, because I quite like Ghost Recon, even though I think they haven't perhaps made the game that they needed to make in the last few years. But that one's gone open. A lot of games are moving towards this idea of choice. We're getting a Watch Dogs 2, which I didn't think we would get. I kind of felt that the backlash for Watch Dogs might have made Ubisoft decide to drop it in favour of The Division, because Division is super popular at the moment. You know, it's got a lot of people playing it. It's performed really well for Ubisoft. I have no idea what they're doing with Uncharted. I say Uncharted, Jesus Christ. Assassin's Creed. I really don't know what they're going to do with that series. I think it should go for a break, personally, and maybe come back stronger, maybe never come back again. But I just get the feeling that Ubisoft like printing money that all the Assassin's Creed fans like to give them. So I don't see them changing that formula anytime soon. I just see them adding to it. You know, it's been a couple of years now since the Splinter Cell, but what do they do next with that series? You know, I love Splinter Cell, and I think that the Blacklist game was one of the most polished Splinter Cells that exist. I think it was really great in a lot of ways, but there were also certain aspects of that game that just made it feel different. It didn't feel like a Splinter Cell to me in a lot of ways. When you were doing certain levels quickly and stealthily and it felt awesome, then it felt like Splinter Cell. But when you were listening to that generic dude instead of Michael Ironside, that is the worst thing they could have done for somebody like me, because I was really invested in that character. So that killed it in a lot of ways. And then you have those levels where you're in the first person shooting stuff, which was fucking terrible. And it was just, I don't know, to me, Splinter Cell was always about being slower. It was about being meticulous. It was about being more realistic. Like, you had your Metal Gear Solid, which was generally goofy and arcadey, and then you had Splinter Cell, which was, it was your dad in his pajamas creeping around Nelt in the shadows, and that was, it was like you got rid of the lights, you crept around a lot, you took it slow, you saw the paths. It wasn't about, you know, speed running through a mission, marking and executing and doing all that shit. That's what it evolved into. It evolved into this, you can do action if you want to, but you don't necessarily have to. And I think they did a great job with that, but I don't know where you go from now. Do you go even faster? And what the hell does that game look like if you do? You know, do you pull it back and make it more reserved, more traditional, and then you piss off all the new people? Or do you go even open world and give it more choice? Do you try to compete with something like Metal Gear Solid 5, which was one of the best games for me personally to transition into that larger space? That said, that game has a lot of issues, you know. It's an incomplete game that could have been a complete masterpiece, and instead, it's just great, but with flaws. And it's a shame, because if they'd have had the budget and Konami had not fucked them so hard, the whole Lord of the Flies final act would have been added to that game, and it would have been less fillery in a lot of ways, and I think it would have been fully realised with bosses and fully realised with story, because let's be honest here, folks, Metal Gear Solid 5's story is almost non-existent, because you spend most of it listening to it via tapes that you don't have to engage with. Snake does almost nothing in that game of worth. He never interacts of any real significance. He literally feels like a cipher for people to bark exposition at him. And it makes it feel like a very different kind of narrative. And the story in its essence is not necessarily bad. It's ridiculous, but it's not bad. It doesn't have the boss fights. It doesn't have the story beats. It was lacking a lot of key components to Metal Gear, but when it came down to playing a stealth game in a sandbox, I've never played a game that handled it that well, because I think that the mechanics were great, and I don't agree with all of them. You know, I'm not that person who's just going to suck a dick of a game for the sake of sucking that tasty dick. It had a lot of issues, but it did things so well, and I had a lot of fun with that game, and I don't know if Splinter Cell can go that way, and I don't know if I would like it to, but what does it do if it doesn't? Because Next Generation to me, or what it seems to be to me, which is not necessarily what I want it to be, but it's what it seems to be, is this idea of everything bigger, everything larger. You know, it's this male complex being projected into games. Everybody wants a bigger dick, so we'll give everybody a bigger dick and make it veinier and prettier and glossier. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a good game, and I think that's what we need to be careful with, as we've actually lost them at the moment, so they're patrolling again, which enables us to divide and conquer a bit. But we've been doing this now for 13 minutes, So it's a real big sequence if you don't stealth it, guys. So just word to the wise. If you want to get through this quicker, just YouTube a crushing stealth bit for this. And I'm sure there's some really reliable strat that somebody's found. Because this is functional and it'll get you through, but it ain't quick. And you need to be aware that some of these fights last. And you can die very quick if you get unlucky. And there's nothing worse than doing this massive siege and going back to the beginning of it. So Godspeed on whatever you decide to do. But yeah, this idea of just bigger and wider and more choice and all these features, like, where does it end that? You know, does it end when we're taking part in 300-man war simulators where, you know, you spend more time sitting in the fucking dropship waiting to land before you immediately get buzzsawed down by some gun emplacement 30 seconds into the first map, and then you're waiting an hour to respawn? Like, where does this end? This illusion of scale. Like, I think the only good thing about us focusing on these bigger things is that it almost becomes nostalgic to have games that don't. That was annoying. That enemy there is the most annoying enemy in this game. He is designed to rush you and grab you. And not only that, but he holds you for an eternity. And if you're injured when he starts grabbing you, he can break your neck. I cannot even begin to tell you how much I would make that guy lie in a prison of shit with razor wounds on every inch of his body until he died through massive severe shock from every infection that exists. Because that's how much of a cunt he is and how much I hate that enemy design. And you know the funny thing is, if he was in the other games, he would make some sections insanely difficult if there was an enemy that was designed to just rush you. And that's exactly what that one does. So as far as difficulty goes, insanely clever. It's the thing that Quantum Break needed and never got. That was a great shot. I'm so glad he died. That was a grenade. Get out of that. But when you watch the making of this game, you realise that they want you to never feel safe. They don't want you to be a... I forget the term that they used, but they don't want you to just sit in one piece of cover and win. And I think it's a very admirable thing, and I think they've done a great job in this game of essentially fucking you in cover. That's the end of the fight, by the way, guys. You'll notice Elena talked, she stood up, and then the music changed. So lots of cues to tell you that you've won. Now we're going to run around and get the best gear we can. And it's probably going to be the Bartok, or the Barok, sorry. I keep calling it Bartok. It's Goku's dad, yeah. No, it's going to be the Magnum, and then the China Lake off that dude over there. And we're going to carry those two weapons into one of the hardest fights in the game. But I've got a really good spot, and it really isn't too bad once you understand how it works, and if you play it intelligently. But what was I saying? People that rush you make the game really difficult. That's what Quantum Break would have needed. The making of thing. They didn't want you to be in cover and win from cover. And I understand that, but I like that. You know, I like a traditional third-person shooter where it's about intelligently putting yourself in cover, and it's about moving between cover and having that level of control and fighting. I like those traditional fights. Like I would like a fight where you see the cover on this side here, it's perfect for a gunfight. They're on this side, you're on that side, you're both shooting at each other. That, to me, is kind of what I grew up with when it comes to these games, and that's the stuff I really enjoy. I like the innovation of taking that away and making it so that you have to be diverse in your approach, you have to move, you have to get into these crazy situations, and I think they were really successful with it. But I must say, I am definitely old school when it comes to that mentality, and it must come from something like Gears of War. Because to me, those games are literally 99% chest-high walls and 1% holding your hand to your ear while you walk through a section you wish you could move quicker through. That's what those games are. And when you have a game that has really satisfying cover mechanics, I think it can be some of the most fun shooter of any shooter game. And that brings me to a point that I've not discussed with these games, which I think is still kind of lacking. The worst thing in the world in Uncharted is when you want to get into cover, you're mashing circle, and Nathan takes an eternity to get into cover. I don't know if it's because of all the fancy animation priority that the game gives to these silly, like, scrambles that he does. I'm not too sure, but when I went back to Uncharted 3, the first thing I noticed was there were moments where I was literally counting the seconds between him going to attempting to get into cover to actually being in cover. And it led to some bad deaths because he wouldn't get in fucking cover. And in that game, way more than this game, you get knocked out of cover a lot. And it happens in Uncharted 4 when a grenade's too close to you. It also happens if your cover gets hit by something explosive and it's degradable. It will knock you out of cover. And watching Drake recover from that stunned animation and then panicking your way into something that stops bullets, it's one of the most nerve-wracking aspects of crushing. Because a lot of the times you're not in a position to survive. And I think they did a good job with the scrambles in that, even though I hate them personally. I think they did a great job with it. Another thing that's really nice in this game is the hair tech. A couple of the close-ups on Uncharted 3, I was surprised at just how detailed and how well that game had aged and how good it looks on PS4. And then you come back to this game and you just see just how far they've come with that technology, with the water on the hair and the way that the hair is modelled. It's just crazy, guys. It's really crazy. I'm making a mistake here, too. You're meant to, I think, just hold the button, and he pulls it in. I was trying to pull it in by pulling the analog backwards like a fishing game. I'd forgotten how this worked, so it took me a little while to get to that. But it happens, you know. Played a lot of games, you get confused. But another convenient wheelie box that did various things back in the 1700s or the 1600s. And I hate this mechanic, I really do. And it sucks because I praised it in Last of Us because I thought it was a nice mundane way of making traversal more grounded and more fixed in reality. And then we come a couple of years later to this game and I feel like it's shoehorned in every fucking opportunity they could. It's like they've got some kind of sponsorship from a wheelie box chest thing, and they can't help but shove it in every section that's unnecessary. And it sucks because I think it's a cool idea. I just wish it was different. Like, why isn't it occasionally a chest of drawers? You know, why isn't it occasionally something else, like a statue or a piano? Anything else but fucking boxes. It's so annoying. Look at the water. Look at the reflections on the water, dude. My God. Look at this. Look at the leaves. I just want to stare at them leaves. And leaves are quite boring. You know the worst thing about Uncharted 4, even though I keep saying the worst thing is something different every time, is how crap real life looks after you've stared at this game on a nice telly for long enough. I went out the other day with my girlfriend, and I was just like, this world looks like shit now. Uncharted has broken the world because it looks so goddamn beautiful and everything's really shiny and artistic and beautifully lit. And then you go outside and it's grey and it's crap and it's flat and you're just like, I want shininess again. How dare they do this to my eyes? And it's true. It's that funny thing, you know, games look so good now that it's that thing like, I could look out the window. I could go out the window, which is a terrifying prospect for somebody that's a dungeon dweller like myself. Or, let me just finish this little thought. I could put Uncharted on and go into photo mode and everything is beautiful. I do like this game, as much as there's a part of me that hates it though. This is such a cognitive dissonant appraisal of Uncharted 4. It really is, and I'm hoping it makes these a little bit more interesting for the people that aren't coming here for the game, for the people that are coming here to listen to my commentary. I hope it does for you folks. Because to me, when I listen to somebody play a game and all they're doing is sucking the game off, I find it kind of boring. There is an exception to this though, and there's a puzzle here by the way. You need to get Elena to be a counterweight, but she won't do it until you trigger her to do it, which is one of those moments where you're relying on a partner, and I'm not entirely sure what scripts it. I think you might have to fall once, or you might have to wait for it to work. But she's going to come, and she's not going to come unfortunately, but she's going to step on this and be a nice anchor for us. But the exception to that is when you can hear the passion and the glee in people. Like, I watched an episode, was it Game Grumps? I think it was Game Grumps, and they had this guy who's known for being in, I think it's some YouTube pop band by the name of something to do with ninjas, like Super Sexy Dancing Ninjas or something. Not my idea of good music, but, you know, a creative guy who's got a good voice who does his own thing on YouTube. And he joined, is it Velociraptor? Or whatever it's called, the guy who did Metal Gear Awesome. He joined him on a co-op experience that they do on God Hand. And I know I keep talking about God Hand, and I apologise, guys, but this is an example of what I mean. And this dude has such a love for God Hand, such just an adoration for the game and a knowledge of the game as well. He's a good player, he knows how to play, and he knows about the game too. So while he's playing it, not only is he showing you what you can do in the game, and he's representing it very well, but he's also telling you about the death cycle and about what this was and about what that was, and all these little bits of information and minutiae about the game, which, you know, could be utter bullshit for all I know, but he seemed like he knew what he was talking about. And the entire time he's doing it, he's smiling, he's laughing, and he's enjoying himself. And you can tell that that is somebody that really loves that game. And when you get somebody like that, where they can come across genuinely rather than, you know, fucking that whole area of YouTube where they've just got a face cam that's so big it's like 1/5 of the video, and they keep just pulling faces at every opportunity that they can. And that to me is, they could be playing any game, it really doesn't matter what they're playing, it's more about the act of what they're doing, because they're entertainers that are very good at doing that kind of super enthusiastic about everything, the world is full of gumdrops and rainbows and no one ever dies, and I don't understand that at all, and I find it really offensive, that kind of stuff. It bugs me to death, but I'm not going to talk about that. But this guy was, you know, like super genuine with it, and he wasn't even sucking the game off. I keep saying this very crass, you know, description. It was just somebody who liked the game and he wanted to share his enjoyment of it with you. And that to me is the best kind of video, when it's somebody not being critical. Everything else comes across as kind of not as good. But that was a really, really fun series. I enjoyed that a lot. Another guy who's good for this, if you're looking for somebody to watch, I forget the name of him. Bollocks. Dan Gafster. I've not checked his channel in a while. I'm hoping he's got 1 million subscribers, because if anybody deserves it, it's this guy. He's a voice actor who's trying to get into doing more voices, and he kind of dubs cutscenes from games he likes, and he's got really good mic quality. He's always super excitable and you know, genuine too. It's never excitement for the sake of it, it's kind of who he is. And he does curse and swear and get angry every so often, but there's always an element of love behind it, and he plays the games he likes, which are essentially like classic platforming games and character-driven action games. Like I think his favourite game in the world is Ninja Gaiden 2, and he's good at it too. And he's playing it live, which is very tough to do. And he's playing on Master Ninja. He's not you know, scalping. And he does a fantastic job of really making you enjoy it vicariously through him. And when I saw his channel at first, I think he had like 300 subscribers, and the dude is worth so much more than that. But there's no justice on YouTube, so it doesn't really matter what I think, unfortunately. But that guy is great. But for me personally, I love to watch somebody who both enjoys and dislikes areas of games. I like people who do what I do, basically. And I find it interesting to see what the things that irk them and the mechanics that they don't appreciate and the ones that they do, and just the differing perspectives of what they bring to it. And that's what I like to watch playthroughs for. It's not necessarily for the gameplay unless they show me something new or something insane. Like when you watch somebody do a strategy that's so fucking good you wish you'd come up with it, that's a beautiful moment. But mostly for me, it's the person. You know, it's how the person feels, what's going through their mind when they're doing it, you know, how they approach things. It's their process, and that's the stuff I find really fascinating. But this right now, I'm running around trying to see if there's any spots that I could maybe try here. I'm also looking for any sneaky weapon caches that's got some good tools for the job. But can you remember when I told you to pick up the Baroque and pick up the China Lake, because you're going to need it? You're going to need it for this. So here's your checkpoint, guys, and this is the only one you're going to get. Okay, folks, commentary take 2. Bastard. So this is a very difficult section. I've completely forgot what I've already said and what I haven't said, so this is going to be confusing. At the beginning, I'm going to get rid of the minigun guy, even though you can use him later on if you want to, which I'll explain throughout this fight. Then I'm going to rush down here. The only place you're vulnerable from is the hole in the roof where that guy shot me from, and people will drop, and that staircase. We are going to isolate both lines of sight here and stay behind this box that cannot be destroyed. You want to use the Magnum on the stragglers because it'll put them down in one, and you want to use the grenade launcher on the heavies, and the grenade guy that turns up is the only threat here. If he hits you, it will knock you out of cover and you will die before you get a chance to get back in, because it's just the way this area seems to work. This is a tough sequence, but it is made manageable by being intelligent, not getting too overzealous, and knowing when to be bold. So there's the grenade launcher on the guy over there. There's the guy coming down the stairs. Two guys on the stairs, so put them down. There will be one dude here who has a Magnum, so you can leave him till he gets close to kill him, and then you can refill your Magnum if you want to. That's a grenade, so we have to move. Do not get too reckless here, though, because you can die very quickly. Do not get into fist fights either. Fist fights are a death sentence, because they're too fucking long. You can't just punch a guy once and knock him out. You have to do the fucking 7 punches, he grabs you, you headbutt him, and then you punch him and he falls over like two fairies, ballet dancing for the WWF. So do not even entertain it. You'll notice there's a bunch of the crappy white shirt guys that are pushing us. There's the guy with the Magnum. He's got unlimited bullets because he's a bitch. I melee this guy, which is not listening to my own advice, but it does work. And that gets me this machine gun, and it gets me a grenade. There's a couple snipers over there. They're not quick enough to kill you, so you're completely safe. And note, the grenade launcher guy's due. So whenever he drops, get him! Get him immediately. Put him down. It doesn't matter how many it takes, put him down. And when he's dead, you just have to kill the stragglers. There's a nice quick grenade from that arsehole. He didn't feel any of those bullets and threw a perfect grenade. And now you'll notice there's lasers on the right hand side. Both of the snipers that were on the balconies have rushed me. And they've done that because there's nobody left to fight. Once we kill these two guys, we've won. And something to note, folks. This took me about 4 attempts to record. This area is good, and this strategy is solid, but it's not going to win the fight for you. A lot of this depends on how you react and where those enemies go, because of the RNG and everything. Prioritize the grenade guys, prioritize the heavies, and if you're having trouble, don't kill the minigun guy at the beginning. Come down here, wait for him to get real close, and throw 3 grenades at his feet. He'll die, pick up his minigun, and then shit on everybody with the minigun. It's a real good strategy, but you can't use cover, so it's kind of risky. And I had a super good run doing exactly that, and then I got killed by a grenade, so I decided to give it up as a bad job. But it was successful, and now we get to refill both the China Lake and the Magnum, so we have this combination of weapons that has enabled us to be so successful for most of these last few missions. And if you're a person using cheats, you can put on unlimited ammo, and it will give you infinite ammo for these 2 weapons, and there is no situation in this game that you will struggle with, because even chapter 20, once you've got around the point that the realization of there's no cover on that section that makes it really hard, there's no checkpoint on that section, there's 2 waves of assholes who kill you very quick, the only difficulty remaining then is the lack of ammo. And in my strategy, which is going to be a rather defensive strategy, there is a couple of instances where I don't have a bullet to my name, and I'm waiting for them to throw bad grenades and kill themselves, or for Elena to actually hit them with a gun that works, rather than that pretend Nerf dart bullshit that she does for everything else. And it's in those moments where, when I go out of cover trying to find ammunition, I could have easily died at any point. Any single moment could have gone bad. But it didn't, because I got lucky. And you might not get so lucky, and that's something that you need to be aware of, guys. That section coming up, the strategies that I have, will give you an understanding of the fight coming up, and they will give you hope, because they'll give you something to aim for, they'll give you goals to achieve. But there is no strategy for winning. When you're in that moment, and it's all kicking off, it's just on you, and it's on how the game plays out, because there is no win button there. There is no guaranteed way for success, and that's what makes it so taxing and so challenging. and it's coming up very shortly. But this sequence here, pick up the lighter, it's then going to promote this rather questionable sequence where all we need to do is get Elena to touch this globe, and now that we have that information, it would be really nice if it would let us touch it and we could skip all of this wild goose bullshit. But it has to have this edifying moment for her, it has to give her value and make her worthful, and I don't get it. They're making us, even though we know how to progress, arbitrarily go and pick a bunch of wrong answers to get to the right answers. It seems like an issue to me. Personally, I think we should be able to go to the globe and press it ourselves once we know it's there and skip all of this. But maybe it's loading, maybe it's doing something behind the scenes, maybe there's a piece of optional dialogue here that the devs really wanted you to hear. Whatever it is, I don't like it. And I think it's one of the smaller issues in a game that has so many qualities. So, shame on you, Naughty Dog. Give us a quicker way of circumventing this bullshit.
I think so.
But it's going to open up the catacombs, and we're going to be going towards Avery's descent, and then it's going to be no escape, guys, and I can finally give you some context for the horrors that I've been speaking of. And I'm hoping you do it super quick, in 3 minutes, like an absolute nutter. I'm hoping you rush everybody, you've got perfect aim, you're in all the ammunition, and you have zero issue, and you're like, what is this guy talking about? This section's easy. But if you don't, you could be there for a few hours. Because I've seen a guy on a comment on one of the YouTube videos, he was there 3 hours, I was there about an hour and a half. You know, it took me, when I started recording, 40 full minutes to get it, once I'd figured out a strategy that would work. But I'm going to talk more about this when we're there. So thank you for watching, and you take care now.